Hey, welcome to First Church. We are so excited that you are here for week one of our You're Invited series. If you're new, my name's Chad. Welcome. In addition to the great crowd we have here in the room today, I know we have a whole bunch of people joining us online right now as well, like Brad and Carrie, Jerry, Kelly, Andy, and a whole bunch of others. So if you are here on site, would you get loud? Put your hands together. Welcome in our online family. Let them know we are excited that they are joining us for You're Invited as well. And if you can't tell, today is Tailgate Sunday. And I see we have a whole lot of teams represented in the room here today, which is awesome. And every single year, I like to see what college football team our church is rooting for. So I want for you on the count of three to yell out what college team you're cheering for this season. We're going to do it at one time. And I want to see if there's a certain team that stands out above the rest. Okay, can we do that? You guys awake? Ready to go? Okay, here we go. Yell it out. What team you're cheering for? 1, 2, 3. Wow, yeah, I just heard, whoa, but that was still cool. That was awesome. I think I heard some OU fans out there, did I? Yeah. All right. How about some OSU fans? Got some Cowboys fans? A lot more OSU fans in this service, okay, than OU fans. Were there some Tulsa fans as well? Tulsa Golden Hurricanes? Yeah, okay, sweet, got a few. Are there any other Kentucky fans besides me in the room? Any? Oh, got some right here. God's people are in the house. Yes, all right. Awesome. Well, glad all of you guys are here. I can't go through all the teams, but I do also see some NFL jerseys as well. And I know around here, there are basically two teams that people cheer for. Now, I'm a Cincinnati fan. If you don't know that about me, I'm a Cincinnati fan. Ooh, we got some other Bengals fans. Awesome. Yeah, Houday. There it is. There it is. I didn't pay these people to do that either. That's awesome. I'm a Cincinnati fan. Grew up like an hour and a half from Cincinnati. But around here, people pretty much cheer for one of two teams, either the Dallas Cowboys or the Kansas City Chiefs. And so, hang on. Hang on. We're going to take a vote, okay? So just hang on. Don't get ahead of me. Calm down. Okay. I want to take a vote. And so if you had to pick one team, all right, even if you don't like either of these teams, if you had to pick one, who would you cheer for? Let me hear you. Would you cheer for the Dallas Cowboys? Good number. All right. How about the Kansas City Chiefs? Yeah, that's what I thought. A whole bunch of them. Man, look here. Yeah. I don't know what that is. I don't do that. Okay, I'm not going to do it anyway. This is Casey Wolf, and Casey Wolf is here with us today. Yeah. You can see him out in our lobby. We got some other mascots as well. Get your picture with him, whatever. We are glad that he's joining us. And because you were so kind to be here with our First Church family today, I actually have a gift for you. And so I want you to wear it proudly, okay? There you go. You can wear that proudly. Hold it up. We're done with KC Wolf. All right, let's give it up for KC Wolf. All right, thanks, man. He's awesome. Make sure you see him and enjoy all the festivities that we have going on today. We've got snacks, we've got photo booths, there's games, and of course, mascots. And we're just glad that you are here. And our staff has been so excited about Tailgate Sunday and the start of the You're Invited series that we've been, let's say there hasn't been a lot of work being done this past week. That's how excited we've been. And a couple of our staff members, they decided to take a typical tailgating game, cornhole, to a whole new level like Dude Perfect style and make some trick shots. Take a look at what they did this week.
All right, here we go. Through the golf cart, hole in one, cornhole. Let's do it. Houday.
Off the back of the golf cart, into the cornhole board. Here we go.
Off the roof of the church, into the cornhole. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you how many times it took them to do that, okay? There were a lot of takes. Just want to let you know. Now, you might be asking, why do we do this? Why do we have Tailgate Sunday? Why do we have this You're Invited series where we throw a party every single week? If you're new to church, you're new to First Church, you're like, this is not what I thought church was all about. Why are we doing this? Well, it's because of how we see the church. Several years ago when my son Alex, he's now 11, almost as tall as I am, when he was much younger, 2-3 years old, his mom and I and with him stopped by a Kohl's department store. And he was bored, I was bored, Allison was the one who wanted to do all the shopping. And so I just let Alex run around the store and have fun. And so he was running in between aisles and around clothing racks and all that stuff. And I was just letting him have a great time. He was having a blast. But in the process, he almost ran into this older lady who was there shopping as well. And when he ran up on her, it kind of scared her. She jumped, she was startled, and I felt bad because he did almost run into her. And so I immediately started to apologize. And I was like, oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry. He was just bored, his mom's shopping. I'm just letting him run around, have some fun. And she looked at me, and I'll never forget what she said. She said, oh, don't worry about it. Let him have some fun. It's not like he's in church or anything. And she didn't know I was a preacher. She didn't know that I even went to church, for that matter. But I'll never forget what she said. And she may not have meant anything by it, but where did this idea develop that the church is the opposite of what's fun? Where did this idea come from? That the church is the opposite of having a good time? That the church is something that we're obligated to do because like the Bible tells us we need to, be part of the church. But it's not something we really want to do. Where did this come from? Because I don't think that's what Jesus ever intended for his church. I don't think Jesus ever intended his church to be something that people consider dull and boring, outdated. No, I think Jesus intended so much more for his church. In fact, listen to what Jesus says shortly before he goes to the cross. John 15:11. I have told you these things. In other words, I've taught you all this stuff. I've given you all these teachings so that you will be filled with my joy. I've taught you all this stuff, this new way of life, so that you will be filled with joy, and not just any joy. Jesus says, my joy, the joy of heaven, supernatural joy, joy that is outside of this world, joy that is more than any superficial happiness that this world can offer you. You will be filled with my joy. And then he says, and yes, your joy will overflow. See, what Jesus here is talking about is not that we will have some superficial happiness or some fake joy where we put a fake smile on our face and just put on a show. Jesus knows that life hurts sometimes way too much for us to fake that. No, what Jesus here is talking about is that when we follow him and follow his teachings, we will have this inner joy, this inner contentment, this inner peace, this inner hope that sustains us through the difficult times of life, that carries us through our hard days, that allows for us to know that we are living for something beyond just what we see around us. Because life at times is going to be difficult because we live in a fallen world. But when his joy is inside of us, then that joy will carry us through. And what Jesus here is saying is, I came to confront the sadness that exists in this world because of sin with the joy of heaven. And so why are we here? What are we to do? Well, we're here in order to take the joy that Jesus has multiplied in us and multiply it in others. We're supposed to overflow with that joy so that just by simply being around us, other people can get a taste of heaven. Other people can experience Jesus' joy. Now, what the Bible is not saying is that the church is just all fun and games, that we never talk about anything serious. And if you come to First Church on a regular basis, you know we do talk about serious issues. We take our mission very seriously. We take the Bible seriously. It's not that it's just all fun and games and that we never have bad days. That's not what Jesus here is saying. But what he's saying is that even in the midst of the most difficult times, we have reason to celebrate because of the resurrection of Jesus. That the resurrection of Jesus gives us hope beyond this world. And so because of that, Jesus established his church to be a community where the joy of heaven invades the sadness of earth. That's why we're here, and that's why we're doing what we do. That's why we're having this You're Invited series. It's interesting to me that Jesus says these words in Luke chapter 14. He says, when you have a party. Now that word party there, some translations translated when you have a feast or a banquet. But what is Jesus talking about here? What he's talking about is when you get together with people. He's not talking about a church party, like a church function or a church event. Sometimes when we talk about having a party at church, or the church having a party, we think of like, oh, it's Super Bowl Sunday, so the church is going to have a Super Bowl party. Everybody come out, and we'll have a church Super Bowl party. That's not what he's talking about. He's not talking about a church function. He's talking about a normal party. Like when you get together with people, when you invite people over to your home, when you get together and have a meal, when you have a party, he goes on to say, invite everybody. Invite people that you normally wouldn't invite. Invite people who no one else would invite. Invite people who are different than you. Invite people that are oftentimes ignored. Invite everybody. Because Jesus wants for the world to know that nobody is a nobody to God. Everybody matters to God. And when people spend time with God's people, followers of Jesus, the church, then they will experience the joy of heaven just by being around us. Not just by coming to church and being part of our services, but just by being around us in this life. They will experience a joy that the culture around them could never offer them. And I think that's what people need today more than anything. Because you've probably seen one of these before. It's a stethoscope. And if you were to put one of these on the heart of any nation on the face of the planet, not just the United States, but any nation on the face of the planet, do you know what you would hear? You would hear an irregular heartbeat. Because you all know this. The heart of our world is sick. Just pay attention to the news. Have a conversation with your neighbor or coworker. Listen to what your kids or grandkids are experiencing in life. The heart of our world is sick. And Jesus saw us in our sickness and said, I can do something about that. Jesus saw us with all of our hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and he said, I can help them, I can heal them, I can hold them up. And that's why he came, that's what he came to do. Not to ignore the sadness around us, but to confront it with the joy of heaven. And I think that joy is what our world needs now as much as ever. And it's what a guy in Mark chapter 10 needed also. We're going to study about him today. His name is Bartimaeus. You can call him Bart for short. I mean, Bartimaeus is a cool name, but you can call him Bart or Barty for short if you want to. But his name, Bartimaeus, literally means son of honor. But even though his name meant son of honor, his life was anything but honorable. See, most people didn't even acknowledge Bartimaeus' existence. Very few people would have showed him any honor at all. Because the Bible tells us that Bartimaeus was blind. And in a day and age before social services or any type of Disabilities Act, the way that a guy like Bartimaeus survived was by begging on the streets. See, the only thing he could do in order to survive. So day after day, he would be on the streets, begging, asking for money. And so a lot of people considered Bartimaeus just to be a nuisance. They ignored him. They criticized him. They made fun of him. And a lot of people even judged him. Because you see, it was the common belief in their day and age that if you had any type of physical disability, then that was punishment from God. That was judgment from God because you or your family did something wrong. Now, the Bible doesn't teach that, but people believe that, and the religious leaders even taught that. So Bartimaeus has been looked down upon, ridiculed, ignored, made fun of his entire life. His entire life, everybody has treated him like a nobody. That is, until he met Jesus. Let's read and see what happened in Mark chapter 10, starting at verse 46. Then now the they here in this passage is Jesus and his disciples. Then Jesus and his disciples came to the city of Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, that's important, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, that is the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. Now it's important to know before we go any further that this scene is taking place in the city of Jericho. Jericho was the last stop that you would make before you went to Jerusalem. The last pit stop that you had before you made the 15-mile uphill hike to the city of Jerusalem. So if you wanted a bathroom break, like at a Buc-ee's or a QT, Jericho was the last stop, okay? And so a lot of people, travelers, went through Jericho, both going to Jerusalem and leaving Jerusalem as well, coming back from Jerusalem. And what Bartimaeus would do is he would sit right at the entrance to the city because he knew that right there he could get a whole lot of foot traffic back and forth. He would sit there day after day and beg for money. Now, Jesus and his disciples, they are in Jericho because they are also going to Jerusalem. But if you know the context of Mark chapter 10, you know that Jesus and his disciples are going to Jerusalem for the last time in the Gospels. Because you see, Jesus is just days away from being arrested. Jesus is on his way to the cross and he knows it. Jesus is just days away from being falsely accused, being put on trial, being beaten, and then eventually placed on the cross. Jesus is just a few days away from all that. To come and do the main thing that he came to do, pay the price of mankind's sin. And as Jesus is leaving town, he encounters this man that everybody else considered to be a nobody, Bartimaeus. Now, it's also important to note there's a large crowd around Jesus this day. And at this point in Jesus' ministry, he always has large crowds around him. Because remember, this is the end of Jesus' earthly life. And so by this point, Jesus has fed 5,000 people, over 5,000 people on one occasion with a little boy's sack lunch. Jesus has walked on water, he's calmed storms, he has healed tons of people with physical disabilities. Jesus, even more recently, just brought a man back from the dead, a man named Lazarus who'd been dead in the grave for 4 days, and he brought him back from the dead, called him out of the tomb. Word is spreading everywhere about Jesus. Jesus is probably the most popular rabbi around. He's probably the most popular public figure in this region. And so everywhere Jesus goes, crowds flock to him. And so when word gets out that Jesus is in Jericho, everybody wants to see him. Everybody wants to get a glimpse of him. And so Jesus is leaving town. People are lining the streets to see him. There's like this makeshift parade going on. And right up front, side of the road, is Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus isn't sitting there again because he wants to necessarily see Jesus. Well, encounter Jesus. He's there because he's always there. And as he's sitting there begging, he starts to hear the commotion all around him. Something big is getting ready to happen. There's excitement in the air. And then he starts to hear people talk. He starts to hear one name over and over again. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus is here. Jesus is coming through. Jesus is almost here. Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus. And Bartimaeus has heard the stories about Jesus as well. Because the rumor is, this guy is a prophet sent from God, and many people, more and more, are saying, this guy Jesus may even be the long-awaited Messiah. And so when Bartimaeus hears that Jesus is coming by, this is what happened. When Bartimaeus, heard that Jesus of Nazareth, it was Jesus of Nazareth everybody was talking about, he began to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Many in the crowd rebuked him and told him to be quiet. Shut up, Bartimaeus. Who do you think you are? There's more important people than you around here who want to see Jesus, and they're not getting an audience with him. Who do you think you are? Hush. Keep quiet. But Bartimaeus shouted all the more, Son of David, a messianic title, have mercy on me. Now, before we talk about anything else, do you hear the desperation in Bartimaeus' voice? One translation puts it like this. So he began shouting, Jesus, Son of David, please help me. What is Bartimaeus doing? He's asking a question. Jesus, do you see me? See, Bartimaeus has lived his entire life with nobody really noticing him. And he wants to know, Jesus, do you see me? What he's asking is, do I matter to you enough for you to stop? Does my life matter? Do you see me? And honestly, I think that that is the question that so many of us have asked before. We all want to know that our lives matter. We all want to know that our lives are significant. We all want to know that we are somebody to someone. We want to know if people see us, notice us, are paying attention to us. It's the cry of humanity. In fact, just a few years ago, in 2017, there was a song by the group Banners called Someone to You. And I want you to listen to these lyrics. You may remember the song. It says, I don't want to die or fade away. I just want to be someone. I just want to be someone. Dive and disappear without a trace. I just want to be someone. Well, doesn't everyone? I just want to be somebody to someone, oh. I want to be somebody to someone, oh. I never had nobody and no road home. I just want to be somebody to someone. And isn't that what our culture is saying right now? I just want to know that my life matters to someone. I want to know that my life isn't an accident. I want to know that somebody cares about me. I just want to be somebody to someone because no one wants to feel like a nobody. And I think that's why Bartimaeus cries out to Jesus. Because here's the thing, if Bartimaeus had cried out to some government ruler or political figure or celebrity or even person of nobility walking by, you know what would have happened if he just kept crying out, crying out? He would have been arrested for disturbing the peace. Bartimaeus was a nobody. He had no rights. And the officials, the important people of that day would not have wanted to have been bothered by a guy named like Bartimaeus. What if it had been another religious person walking by, like a rabbi or teacher of the law? They would have scolded Bartimaeus for shouting out to him. We don't want anything to do with somebody like you. We don't have time for somebody like you. And yet when Jesus walks by and everybody tells him to hush, Bartimaeus cries out even louder. Why? Because Bartimaeus has also heard the stories about Jesus. And Bartimaeus knows that when Jesus fed the 5,000, he didn't just feed wealthy people or elite people. He didn't just feed nobles. He didn't feed people who were popular. He didn't just feed people who were well respected. Jesus fed anyone who was hungry. And Bartimaeus knew that when Jesus was going out and healing people with disabilities, he wasn't healing just the children of nobles or those who were popular. He was healing people that nobody else wanted anything to do with. He was helping people who lived on the margins of society, people who were living without hope. And Jesus even had the reputation of being one who liked to hang out with tax collectors and prostitutes and other notorious sinners, people that nobody else wanted to hang out with. And everybody is saying that this Jesus guy could be the Messiah. If this guy is sent from God, you know what that means? If he's the Messiah and he's hanging out with people like me, Bartimaeus is thinking, then that means my life matters to God. And so Bartimaeus wants to put this to the test. And that's why he won't let anybody silence him, because he wants to know, do I matter to God? That's why he uses a messianic title. He doesn't care if anybody else sees him. He wants to know, does God see me? And so he shouts out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Do you see me? Do you notice me? Will you stop for me? And Bartimaeus gets his answer. Verse 49, Jesus stopped. I don't think that there are two more important words in this entire passage than those two words right there. Jesus stopped. I want for you to remember what Jesus is in the process of doing. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem to go to the cross. That's a pretty big deal. It's the whole reason why he came, right? To pay the price of mankind's sin. He's on his way to the cross. He is days away from being arrested. He's on his way to the cross and on his way to do the most important thing that has ever happened in the history of the world. Jesus stops dead in his tracks for a man that everybody else considered to be a nobody. It's a big deal. And Jesus stopped and said, call him. So they called to the blind man, cheer up, on your feet. He's calling you. And I love what happens in this passage. Because Bartimaeus gets up and he runs to Jesus. And Jesus is letting Bartimaeus know and everybody else who was there that day know, and he's letting us know. He stopped for Bartimaeus because nobody is a nobody to God. Everybody matters to him. And if you don't hear anything else that I say today, hear this. Your life matters to God. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Because we have an enemy, Satan, who wants to fill your head with lies, who wants you to believe that your life doesn't matter, who wants you to believe that you're just an accident with no real purpose. Our culture tells us that we're nothing more than sophisticated pond scum. Satan wants you to believe that there is no greater purpose for your life. There's no greater significance to your life. You're just here by accident. You're just here to pay the rent until you die. And even if you believe in God, maybe you go to church, sometimes Satan uses a different tactic, a different lie. And he'll say things like, well, yeah, I mean, there's a God, but God doesn't love somebody like you. He knows what you do. He knows what you've done. He knows your past. He knows the real you. You're not worthy of him. He could never use somebody like you. He could never love somebody like you. And if we're not careful, we'll start believing those lies. But Jesus came to tell us otherwise. Now, if you watch the NFL, you probably recognize this. What is this right here? Challenge flag, right? Because in a game, a coach in the NFL gets so many challenges. And if they see something that the ref didn't see, or maybe they think the ref missed something, what can they do? The coach can throw the challenge flag, and the game has to stop, and the referees have to re-examine the last play and put it under further review. And oftentimes, the play is actually changed, or the call is changed, because what the referee said happened actually isn't what happened. And I love watching coaches as they, throw their challenge flag. Sometimes they can be kind of humorous. Like, for instance, Pete Carroll one time, he was trying to throw his challenge flag, and he actually grabbed his hand warmer instead. Like, he couldn't find his challenge flag, and so he throws out his hand warmer, and that's not it. And so officially, he can't challenge the call until he finds his flag, so he keeps looking. Eventually, he finds it in another pocket. Had too much stuff on him, I guess. Or how about Belichick? He's great. He kept his in a sock, so he would not lose it. And I love this here. He pulls it out. He's going to throw it. He's waiting for just the right moment, and then he throws it. It's great. And then he puts it back in his sock so he won't lose it. And there are other coaches that they're a little bit more dramatic, They want to wait for just the right moment, and then they spike it because they just want to do it in the referee's face, and they want to challenge the call. And you know what? We live in a world where Satan is painting a picture of life that is completely false, where he is telling people, your life doesn't matter. You're not important. You're not significant. You're not worthy of anything. You're especially not worthy of God. Our culture is telling people that they're nothing more than sophisticated pond scum. And Jesus came on the scene to challenge that. But he didn't challenge it with a flag. He challenged it with a cross. And anytime somebody tells you that your life doesn't matter, there is a cross that stands in history that begs to differ. Because there's a cross that stands in history that speaks of your worth, that speaks to your value. Because something is only worth as much as someone else is willing to pay for it. And Jesus was willing to pay the price of his very life because he loved you. You are worth everything to God, and don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. See, Jesus came to challenge the false narratives that Satan wants us to believe. And when you start to understand that God isn't against you, but that God loves you, and that God is for you, and that he does have a plan and purpose for your life, yes, your life, it changes how you see life. It changes how you live life. See, how you see God determines how you see life. And how you see life determines how you live life. And that's what happened for Bartimaeus. See, in verse 50, I want you to see what happens. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus asked him. The blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." "Go," said Jesus, "your faith has healed you." Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. Now that's kind of a silly question, I think, that Jesus asked there, at least on the surface. Jesus walks up to Bartimaeus. He's like, "Hey, what do you want me to do for you?" Well, Jesus, he's blind. I mean, what do you think he's going to ask? You're the guy who does miracles, right? Why did Jesus ask that question? Jesus already knew the answer. Because love never assumes. Love always listens first. What is Jesus doing here? He's letting everyone know, including Bartimaeus, this man matters to me. He's having a conversation with a man that everybody else considered to be a nobody. What Jesus here is letting everyone know, letting Bartimaeus know, I see this man. Bartimaeus, I see you. I'm paying attention to you. You're worth me listening to. I want to hear you out. I'm here for you. And as cool as it is that Bartimaeus received his sight, I think what's even more cool than that is that Bartimaeus' life has changed. Did you catch what it said? Bartimaeus followed Jesus after this. He didn't go back to his old life in Jericho. He followed Jesus. Wherever Jesus was going, he was going with him. I mean, look at this transition here. It says, Bartimaeus threw aside his coat and he followed Jesus. This is significant because a beggar's coat or cloak in this day and age, that's where they gathered their money. They would put their cloak out in front of them and people would pitch money into it. And then at the end of the day, they would fold up their cloak and take it with them with everything they had earned for that day. So when it says that he threw his coat or his cloak aside, what it's saying is that money that he had collected didn't matter to him anymore. What it's saying is nothing that this world offered him compared to what Jesus was now offering him. Everything else he used to seek after and want and desire, it paled in comparison to now the life that Jesus was offering him. So it's not just that Jesus gave him sight and that was it. Bartimaeus said, Jesus, wherever you're going, I'm going with you. Because Jesus was offering Bartimaeus a brand new life, a fresh start. And that's what Jesus wants to offer you today as well. This past week, I got a car wash membership for the first time. Now, my wife has had a car wash membership for a while, and I've gone with her, but I never had one for my car. I decided to get one, and I paid the monthly membership, and it's one of those car washes where you just pull up and you drive through, and it does the work for you. It's the lazy way of washing a car, but it's awesome. I love it. And so I decided to get this car wash membership this week, and first time I pulled up, ready to go, and there's a teenage guy there directing me who works there, telling me, where to go, whatever, make sure my wheels are lined up just right, because the thing's just going to pull me on through, And so I get right to where I need to go, and he's holding a sign that says, stop and don't hit your brakes. And so I did that. I stopped and didn't hit my brakes, but I wasn't going anywhere. And so I just sit there. And it wasn't working. It wasn't pulling me on through like it was supposed to. And so I'm looking at the guy, and my hands are up. He's holding the sign like, don't hit your brakes. And I'm like, I'm not hitting my brakes. I don't know what's happening. So he comes over to my window, and I rolled down my window. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not hitting my brakes. And he looks inside my car, and he said, that's because you're in park. You're supposed to be in neutral for it to carry you through. And I'm like, man, I am an idiot. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Duh, all right. And I was like, I'm sorry, my bad. I was like, yeah, apparently I don't know how to go through a car wash. I'm sorry. And he was like, oh, no, that's okay. And then he looked at me, and these were his words. He said, aren't you the pastor at First Church? And I'm like, oh no, this is embarrassing, this is bad. So I was like, no, I get that all the time. He's somebody else, but no, I didn't really say that last part. But we had a good laugh about it, and he said, oh yeah, I just left First Church, and we went on. But here's the thing. A lot of times we are stuck when we don't have to be. We're stuck, and Jesus wants to pull us on through and wash us and clean us up and give us a brand new life. And yet, because we're not paying attention or we're distracted or we think we have a better way, you name it, we've got our car, our life in park, not going anywhere. And what Jesus is saying is, if you're willing to actually just trust me and let me lead you, I'll take you where you couldn't go on your own. That's what happened for Bartimaeus. And I love how at the end of this scene here, Luke gives us one more detail. We've been looking at Mark 10, but Luke also talks about this scene. And Luke gives us one more detail in verse 43. Jesus says, your faith has saved and healed you. And he looked up, Bartimaeus looked up, seeing for the first time, and then followed Jesus, glorifying God. And look at this last line. Everyone in the street joined in shouting praise to God. Everyone. Was everyone healed that day? Did everyone personally receive a miracle that day? No. So why was everybody else joining in praise to God? Because the joy of heaven is contagious. That's why we're doing what we're doing here. I mean, most people in this room probably have not received a physical miracle from God. Some may have. But we've all had the opportunity to have our lives changed by God. And so many of us are living out what that looks like right now. And we want you, if you haven't experienced that, to know the joy from heaven that we now have. That's why we're doing what we're doing. Because we know we always have reason to celebrate. Because we know nobody is a nobody to God. Everybody matters to Him. And the party, the celebration that is the resurrection of Jesus is for you as well. Because everybody is invited. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for the cross that stands in history that proves our worth to you. And I pray that if there's anybody here today who doesn't know you as their Lord, that Father, they would. Because Father, we know we are worth everything to you. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for not forgetting about us. Thank you for giving us a greater purpose. And Father, may we live out that purpose in this life. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.